Hello, my name is Harold Lapidus, and welcome to the Boston Herald video podcast. My very special guest today is singer, songwriter, producer, and video star, Carla Olson. And here's a little bit about her life and career. It's a bit of a long intro, but here we go. Correct me if I got any of these things wrong. Carla is originally from Austin, Texas, and she formed a band called the Violators with future go-go bassist Kathy Valentine. They both moved to LA in the late 70s and formed a new band called the Textones. But the main reason I invited Carla here today is because her band, the Textones, covered the Bob Dylan song Clean Cut Kid with Ry Cooder and released it a year before Bob Dylan on their 1984 album Midnight Mission. Dylan gave her the song after she appeared in the video for his song Sweetheart Like You from Infidels. She was miming the guitar solo, originally performed by former Rolling Stones guitarist Mick Taylor. And one reason why now is a really good time to cover this event is on September 17th, there's a Bob Dylan box set covering the early 80s. And it's called The Springtime in New York. And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Later on, after miming Mick Taylor's guitar solo, she ended up collaborating with Mick Taylor for quite some time. And here's a snapshot of some other artists she has collaborated with: Gene Clark of the Byrds, John York of the Byrds, Percy Sledge, Ian McLagan, who played with the Faces, Small Faces, Stones, and Dylan on his '84 European tour with Mick Taylor, Barry Goldberg of the Electric Flag, John Fogerty, lyricist Pete Brown, Joe Louis Walker, Manfred Mann, Paul Jones, Allan Clarke of the Hollies, Don Henley, Poco's Rusty Young, among many others. And the Textones drum set appeared in the Rockpile video for Cool to Be Kind. In recent years, Carla has appeared with the Wild Honey Orchestra at the Autism benefit concerts. She's released 2 collaborative albums, which can be found on Band Camp, along with some of her other recordings. Have Harmony Will Travel and Have Harmony Will Travel Volume 2. There's a new Instagram page, and there'll be links to a lot of the stuff in the blog that accompanies this. Among the collaborators on this album are Juice Newton, Peter Case, Richie Furay, Peter Noon of Herman's Hermits, Timothy B. Schmidt, Terry Reid, Emmy Award winner Mayor Winningham, and again, Percy Sledge and Gene Clark. Her newest projects are, one is with Brian Ray, who played with Etta James and for the last 20 years or so has been in Paul McCartney's band. They perform a new killer version of Procol Harum track, the Procol Harum track Whiskey Train. Carla does the great vocals on it. It's the B-side of his new single, Got a New Thing on Wicked Cool Records. And the big news, I think, is she's shepherded a beautiful new tribute album October 1st called Ladies Sing Lightfoot, a tribute to the legendary singer-songwriter Gordon Lightfoot, and we'll talk about that later. All right, so now you have some idea who Carla is, and we'll find out even more. So hi Carla, how you doing?
I'm great, Harold. How are you doing?
Yeah, relatively okay, considering everything going on in the world.
Yeah, I know. You guys got a lot of trouble up there weather-wise, and we've been spared this year. We've really done well, and I'm not going to complain about a hot day ever again, and I'm certainly never going to complain about the rain because we haven't had rain since March. So,
wow.
And this is well into September, so we're really needing some rain. But other than that, delighted to be here, delighted to be alive and kicking and still doing music, and it's a strange time for all of us musicians and actors and theater people. It's a very strange time, but you just got to keep clawing away at it and seeing if you can find another little place to park yourself and entertain people and write and be joyful about music. And I'm here. Here we are.
I guess that's the best attitude. That's all you can do, right?
Absolutely.
Well, before we get to our interaction with Bob Dylan, you have a lot of great things posted on social media. And I picked one in particular story, which was your interaction with Jimi Hendrix.
Indeed. Yes. Well, I saw him 3 times, and I know a lot of people have seen him more times, but I did see the first, second tour and the the tour he did with, not The Experience, but with Mitch Mitchell and Billy Cox. And the experience totally changed my life. I mean, no pun intended, but it did change my life. And I was, the first time I saw him was February of '68. And the second time was August of '68. And it was, what can I say? He was having a struggle that night. Both nights we saw him, he was having sound problems. But the place I saw him those two times was a 3,000 seater, which is just phenomenal. The tickets were $3.50. I mean, you know, what could you ask for other than a great concert? But even more than that, my friend John Stahaley and I, guitar player who I bought my first electric guitar from, he and I went down to San Antonio from Austin. It's about 90-mile drive to see the show. We were still in high school. And since I didn't drive, he drove. And we went down in the afternoon to see if we could catch the sound check, because we figured the back door's open usually. It's a huge back, stage area, but we just walked in and started talking to his crew that were there. It was around 3 PM. And there seemed to be some difficulty. I don't know if you want as long of an explanation, but it's some difficulty that they were suffering some event that happened the night before that was putting a damper on their spirits. And so we just said, "What is there something we can help you with?" And they said, "Well, last night, all of Jimmy's guitar cases were stolen. 8 Strat cases were stolen in the dressing room where we were playing the night before, which I believe might have been Baton Rouge." And it didn't seem like a problem to us. We said, "Well, do you want to go get some more cases?" And they said, "Well, can you show us? We don't know where we are. Can you show us where to go?" And we'd been to San Antonio a lot of times for concerts. So they followed us to San Antonio Music and bought 8 Strat cases. And when we followed them back to the hall, the venue, which was the Municipal Auditorium in San Antonio, just FYI. And they said, "Would you like to join us for dinner?" So we went to the hotel, which was around the corner, and had dinner with the crew, which was his road manager, Eric, which it's kind of a legendary guy. It's a big guy. You can see him holding up Jimmy's amps most of the time when Jimmy's trying to get feedback. And Robert Wyatt from Soft Machine, which is the opening act, the touring opening act with them. And we had dinner with them, and Eric said, "After the show, you want to come back and meet Jimmy?" So my friend and I said, "Oh, sure, we'll be happy to meet Jimmy." He said, "Okay, come back here." You go up to the presidential suite, knock twice, and then knock again, and we'll see you then. Obviously, it was a fantastic show. And afterwards, we went to Jimmy's suite, and Mitch was there. Noel wasn't around, but Mitch, Jimmy, my friend John, and I, and a lady friend that Jimmy had with him, who everyone knows, but she'll remain nameless for the sake of history. Anyway, we sat in his suite and listened to him talk about all the things that he was excited about, music he was excited about. And he had a small turntable, portable turntable that was on the dresser. And he says, "Do you guys want to hear some new music?" I said, "Oh, please." And he says, "Okay, I'm going to play you the greatest living guitarist." And we're thinking, Segovia, I mean, who, Les Paul. And he said, "Okay." So he puts this, what was an acetate, which I'd never seen before, an acetate, on the turntable. And the first moments of Jeff Beck's new album, Truth, played, which, if you know, it starts with a very slow version of Shapes of Things. And he was so excited about Jeff. And we were like, of course we know who Jeff Beck is. We're big Yardbirds fans. Anyway, that was half of the story. And then after we talked about it for a little while, and Jimmy and Mitch were there, and they said, "God, we'd really love to go play somewhere." It was only about midnight at that point. Concerts were over early then. And we happened to know it was 1968. The World's Fair had just opened in San Antonio, and they had a club that was open until 4. little more liberal, obviously, than Austin, which everything closes at 12 or 1. So we got in our cars. They followed us to a place called Love Street, which was on the Hemisphere grounds, Hemisphere, which is the World's Fair. And our friends, the Sweet Smoke, were playing there. So we waltzed in with Jimmy and Mitch, my friend and I, John. And they just sort of walked up to the stage. There couldn't have been more than 15 people in there by that point. That's without counting the band. And Jimmy said, you know, would you mind if I sat in? And the guitar player, he's gone now, but I saw him hand his 335, his right-handed 335 to Jimmy, and Jimmy just flipped it over and played it ambidextrously. And Mitch played drums with the keyboard player and the bass player. And they played, I don't know, maybe 5 songs, I'm trying to remember. And it was just a phenomenal experience. There you go. And then afterwards, we helped them get back to the hotel, got in our car and drove back to Austin, and the rest is life.
You write about, or posted about seeing a lot of great bands like the Animals and Blind Faith, right? So just want in general, talk about the your influences, what got you started, what inspired you to make music in the first place.
Okay, what got me started was probably 99% of the rest of people my generation was seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. And in 1963, my dad called me in. He was a musician, my dad. He was a classical pianist. And he said, come in, I think you need to see this on TV. And so we always watched Lassie at 6, and 7 o'clock we watched Ed Sullivan just to see who was on. And I was transfixed by these guys in a band. And it wasn't a prepubescent sexual thing, shall we say. It was, I want to be part of a band. I don't just want to play guitar. I want to be in a band. I want that movement, that camaraderie. And that was when I decided, rather than be a horsewoman, which I had been, grew up on a ranch and rode horses all my life, I wanted to play, guitar in a band. So I started pasting in. My mom said, take these green stamp books, paste those green stamps in the books and you can get a guitar. So I put all these green stamps in this 4 books of green stamps, went down to the Redemption Center and picked myself out a little black K guitar off the display. And I started playing. And so, I was quite young, but I had already had classical piano theory. So I kind of knew where I wanted to go. And then a few years later, my dad said, if you're serious, and I'll get you a better guitar. He got me a Goya, which was a nice Swedish guitar. I might say, since I'm Swedish, Swedish background. And I started trying to get a little better. And I mean, I was really into Peter, Paul, and Mary because of Mary Travers. She was the greatest. She had that attitude with her. And Joan Baez, singing wise, was fantastic. And what a great finger picker she was. So I kind of got started in that direction. And then I thought, I can't play Walk, Don't Run on this guitar. I need an electric guitar. So I knew a kid from school who had a friend who was selling a Les Paul Jr., 1956 Les Paul Jr. tobacco sunburst. And I bought it for $125 on time. My folks says, okay, we'll help you get started. And then my sister helped me get an amp, and a couple of my guy friends helped me learn how to plug in the speaker cabinet to the head and just learn how to do the rock and roll thing. I just wanted to make, I wanted to make a move from the folk scene into this a bit more physical, raucous kind of thing. And got my friends at once again, John Stahaley and my other friends, we were all huge Yardbird fans. And my friend John's brother brought back Are You Experienced and Fresh Cream from the West Coast. He'd just come from LA, and they had a record store that had these new records in. And he brought the two of those albums back, and we were just like, oh my God, listen to this. So that kind of got me going in another direction. And the next thing you knew, after the Yardbirds in Blow Up, in the movie Blow Up, we were kids, it was an R-rated film. We snuck into this film like 6 features and sat through 6 features to watch the Yardbirds break up their stuff. And, it was quite an influence on me. And I also just became a huge John Mayall and the Blues Breakers fan, which is where I got into Peter Green and Mick Taylor and Clapton. And there it is. That's the direction I went. So.
And so you formed the Violators.
Well, before that, I got into a band in high school with a bunch of guys, and I swapped my smaller amp for a Marshall Stack, a red one. And I was probably maybe one of the first half dozen people in Austin that had a Marshall. And I just thought, hey, if I'm gonna make some noise, I really need to make some noise. And I joined a band in high school, a couple of bands. The Lone Woman, what are you gonna do? But it didn't really matter. They just knew that I could play, and that was it. Can you play? Can you sing? Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. So, and I have a nice, big, enormous friend to help me with my stuff. So, there you go. But after that, yes, I did eventually, after a couple of trips to Europe and traveling around after high school, I came back to Austin, my hometown, and met my friend Kathy Valentine through other musicians. And she really wanted to start a band, and she had already had a band with her friend who recently just passed away, Marilyn Dean. And we picked up a bass player, Jesse Sublett, and who I played off and on with for years. And we started this band called the Violators, and started gigging in Austin, the early punk scene, the very early punk scene. We were the first, what I would consider the first punk band in Austin that was documented as a punk band. So, it's not something I'm particularly gonna go out and raise flags over, but it was. I think we had an effect on the Austin music scene. Yeah.
And so obviously Kathy went her own way. You were in the Violators. I mean, you're in the Textones. The Violators became. Wait, did the Violators become the Textone, or are they totally separate things?
Just me and Kathy. And we came to LA, flipped a coin, heads it was going to be New York, tails was going to be LA, and it landed on tails. And we got in our cars in 1978 and came out to LA to kick ass and take names. That's what we want. Well, we just, basically, we came with our cowboy boots and an attitude, chip on our shoulder, and we're Texans, and don't mess around with us. And that's difficult right now for me to say, but we came out to LA with the intention of getting a record deal, writing our own songs, and getting gigs. That's what we wanted to do, and we did it. And then a year or so later, Kathy decided she was thinking about going back, and then she ran into somebody who said the Go-Go's are auditioning for a bass player. Their bass player is ill and cannot finish the record that they're going to work on. And Kathy never played bass in her life, and went and borrowed a bass and learned all their songs and went and auditioned and got the gig. And the rest she can say is history. In her book, her great book, All I Ever Wanted, is terrific. If you haven't read it, you should read it. It's one of the better rock and roll books ever written.
And so with the Textones, they got a major label deal. They put out their album Midnight Mission in '84. I mean, I listened to it again a couple weeks ago. It's got this great, Ootsy, Stonesy, Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen kind of vibe. I just love that record. I remember when it came out.
You just nailed it. That's great. Thanks.
And you should definitely check it out if you're not familiar with it. I worked in a record store at the time when it came out. Needless to say, as people our age say, this was before the internet. And it just showed up in the mail, and I looked at it, and it had a Bob Dylan song I hadn't heard on it. So I took it home and listened to it, and fell in love with it. And it's a song called "Clean Cut Kid." And so now the story of how you got it, I know some of it, but I'm sure you'll fill in a lot of the details. Had to do with you being in the Sweetheart Like You video from 1983 from Infidels, Bob's first sort of foray into MTV type videos. And from what I can tell, it was a perfectly mimed replica or whatever of Mick Taylor's guitar solo. I mean, it looked perfect. I don't know if it actually was the right notes.
Well, there was one fudge. There was one fudge on it, and the rest I did actually play and knew. But I just want to mention too that was Bob's first lip sync, and he was quite nervous about it. And it didn't suit him to do lip syncs. He'd never done a lip sync. He'd only done live TV or had people, if they filmed something that he was never, I don't think he's ever been comfortable with doing the lip sync. But just backing up to how I got asked to be in the video, which led to me getting a song from his publisher. His publishing people gave me a list of songs that had not been covered, and then one song that was unreleased. And I chose the unreleased one, which was Clean Cut Kid. And that was an Infidel outtake with Sly and Robbie, and it was done as a shuffle. It wasn't like the way I wanted to do it. Was more Stonesy kind of, what we call a mop kind of thing. And his road manager at the time, Gary Schaffner, knew about my band, the Textones, and had either come to see us or was familiar with our music, and they were putting together a video for that particular single, which was A Sweetheart Like You. They were putting together a video group for the band to back him up, because the band, the people he used to record it was Knopfler and Mick Taylor and Allan Clarke, keyboard player, and they were not available. So Gary had this idea, even though they had a storyboard for the video, Gary had this idea to have this really international looking band. So he had, Chalo Quintana, a Hispanic drummer, punk keyboard player, Keith, I can't remember Keith's last name. He was in one of the seminal punk bands in Los Angeles. And I don't know the bass player's name, and no, it was not Robbie Shakespeare. I don't believe that was Robbie Shakespeare. Some people have said that, like IMDb has erroneously said who was in that video, and it was myself, Clyde King, and Bob, and Charlie and Steve Ripley, who had played with Bob previously before, and T-Bone Burnett. And the video was shot, oddly enough, you'll love this little trivia, was shot in the soundstage in Culver City, where they shot Jailhouse Rock. And we actually all got to go into the room where they had, the mock-up was still there of the jail cells and the pole that Elvis slid down, etc.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's really cool. Even Bob went in there and was like, hey, wow, this is really cool. And we were in that video shoot for 23 straight hours. And I'm telling you, leather pants with conchos for 23 straight hours ain't a lot of fun. But I lived to tell the tale. And the video was originally meant to be a storyboard about a couple that were in love sitting in a bar, and the woman is sweeping up and they're trying to decide whether they want to leave together or something. I'm not exactly sure what the storyboard was, but about 5 hours into it, after they'd shot the stuff, Bob took Mark Robinson into a private area with the intention of just saying, let's just do a performance video. And that's what happened. And that's why you end up with the very end is the woman sweeping up. But that was meant to be a storyboard. And then they were going to, I guess, suppose Mark was going to intersperse some video footage that they were going to shoot. So that's what happened. And we let's just put it this way. All of us knew our parts. Mm-hmm. And Bob was not happy with the outfit he brought. So he does this. This is apparently something he likes to do. He went to Mark Robbins and said, "Can I borrow your black leather jacket that you're wearing?" and Mark goes, "Yeah, sure." So he hands it to him. And that's what Bob has on in the video is the black leather jacket and the white shirt underneath it. Mm-hmm. And the rest of us were all, the rest of us were all fine. We were just like happy to just be there. Sorry, something's on my screen. There you go. Happy just to be there. And they had catered a dinner for us. And there were other people that had been brought into for the video, just as a trivial. BJ Wilson, the drummer for Procol Harum, was there. He'd been called from Santa Barbara to come down because they weren't sure if Trollo was going to be the drummer they were going to use, which Bob did end up using. And so on and so forth. But yeah, when I came into the room to meet Bob, the very first thing, you don't want to seem intimidated because you are intimidated, obviously. And Gary said, "I want you to meet Bob." So, I stuck out my hand in a typical Texas fashion, grabbed it like it was, there was no tomorrow. And, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you." And I probably squeezed his hand to death. But then I felt like, okay, I'm here. And, if they cut me out, they cut me out. It's the way it goes. But luckily, the last 32 seconds is me in the video because I did know that solo backwards and forwards, except for one lick. And I'll let anybody else decide which one it was that I didn't know.
And how much advance notice did you know you were going to do that song?
2 days. And I was working. And I was in the record business as well. I probably called your record store many times as I worked for a marketing company that worked billboard reports and radio and all that. My 9-to-5 job. And I was given a cassette of the song by Gary Schaffner and told that I would be playing the guitar solo bits, the Mick Taylor parts, because Mick was in Europe and wasn't able to be in the video. So I went home on my lunch break, which lived down the street, which was lucky. And my roommate was Textone George Callens. And I said, "George, I got to learn this solo." And so far, it's, they're blues licks. I can play. That's what I do. But the one lick in it was just really scary. And George says, "Look, just pretend like you're playing it." And I went, "I can't do that." And he goes, No, you got to do this. And believe me, they're never going to know. And so when I got to the waterfall lick, which is a signature Mick Taylor lick, I just faked it. There you go. And when Bob and Mark were looking at the teleprompter or the video, prompter to see how everything looked, my manager then, Saul, was standing next to Bob and Gary and Steve Ripley, who didn't know the solo, and God bless him, he's gone now. I mean, rest in peace. And he'd never had the cassette, so he didn't know the bits. And I knew them backwards and forwards. So they were standing there and Bob says, "Well, yeah, but Steve didn't have the cassette." And, and Saul goes, "Yeah, but she knows the part." And Mark Robinson says, "Yeah, I believe she does." So when they edited it, I got the last 32 seconds, and it changed my life. It changed my life. And Bob was very generous to me and very sweet. He's always been very kind and very respectful. And, I'm here to tell the tale that there were many times that I would get emails or letters. People would send me cassettes and, "You got to get this to Bob." And I would go, I can't do this, guys, And I didn't disassociate from him. I just felt like I didn't want to take advantage of the relationship and the way he treated his band members, you know, in this video band was very respectful. You know, the one guy, the keyboard player, that was a friend, I think, of Jesse, his son Jesse's. And he was, like I said, he was in a punk band. Jesse was just kind of coming up. Jacob was much younger then. So we're really kind of, you know, we're treading thin ice to take advantage of anything that Bob ever said or did. It's totally, you know, between me and the gatepost, as they would say in Texas. And years later, you know, I ran into him at the studio when they were recording Empire Burlesque. I was delivering some equipment there, and he came out to the car. It was freezing cold in December, I think, and had like an old hat on, and it was midnight, and we were just dropping off our equipment for the session the next day. I didn't know he was in the studio. And he came out to the car and said, "Hey, Carla, you want to come in and play some guitar?" And I went, sure. I got my guitar, which was in the car, and I went into the studio where they were doing some overdubs. And through that association and that time, I stayed there for 5 or 6 hours. He was very interested right at that point in doing overdubs, and he never got to me, which is fine. But I did meet his guitar tech, Charles Rook, who he ended up, you know, engineering albums for me and with Mick. And later, anyway, long story short is it was a very nice time in my life. Very nice time in my life. Yeah. Thank you, Bob.
All right. So here's the video for Sweetheart Like You, featuring Carla Olson on sort of lead guitar.
A lot of ways. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so as I said, I was working at a record store. I came in and I saw your picture, and again, I was like, well, I saw the video. I wonder if that's the same person. That's, yeah, and of course, it all makes sense that that all happened.
Yeah.
And you hadn't, and at this point, you had no contact with Mick Taylor, had you?
I'm sorry, with
Mick Taylor before you did that video, there was
no, I didn't have any contact with Mick. But after that, Bob and Mick came to a couple of gigs when the Textones were playing, especially because we were playing close to the beach, which he lived out in Malibu, and they drove in, saw us play a couple of times. And that's how Mick decided to get in touch with me about. He said, you know, I'd love to do something with you. If you ever are doing any recording, I can come out. And that's how I ended up doing the show at the Roxy with him. I just approached him about it and said, you know, he was at that point living in New York City, and he was playing the Bottom Line and the Lone Star Cafe and places like that. And with my high school friend, Eric Johnson, they did a double bill. And I just figured, well, he can say no. So I just said, you know, I'm doing a record. You know, if you want to come, I'm going to play the Roxy and I'm going to do a live show. Do you want to come and play and be co-bill? And he said, yeah, I'd love to. So I was like, okay. So we learned the songs that I had for some Textone songs, some solo album that I had done a solo album in Sweden in '88, which came out in '89 with a Swedish band and George from the Textones. And we did a few of the songs off that album, and we did a couple of Stone songs that I thought he got the short shrift on, like Sway, and I always loved Silver Train. So we did that one, and he you know, played on that. And we did John Mayall, Hartley Quits, which I love that song. I mean, it was a tribute to Mick, really, in many ways. And we did Clean Cut Kid, both sets. We did 2 shows, and the album was called Too Hot for Snakes, live at the Roxy. Mick Taylor, Carla Olson.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I think Mick Taylor, that's the best Stones era, you know, like the late 60s, early 70s. You know, Mick Taylor's, you know, that's me. That's
me too. I mean, I love the Brian Jones stuff, and I love that Brian Jones was a fantastic instrumentalist and harmonica player and everything. You know, I mean, he was really tremendous. And but when Mick got in the band, it gave, as I like to say, the minute you're on stage with Mick, or even at rehearsal, there's a muscle he brings to the project and to the song that makes you rise to that. It makes you try to rise to that kind of power. And I'm hoping we did in some ways, get partially there. Mick is a one of a kind player. I think he's a savant, and I think he's probably, I mean, he's left out of many lists of the greatest guitar players of all time, and it irks me, but I can't change how the taste changed through life. But to me, a guy who can play pentatonic and play modal and play borderline jazz, he'll never admit to that. He really doesn't fancy himself as a jazz player, but his best time, though, he said, my best playing was done with Bob Dylan. And his favorite playing of all time, no slight to the Stones, was with Bob Dylan on tour. He enjoyed that much more than anything else he's done.
The two things, well, if I can remember both of them. One is that I just listened to that live album the other day, the Real Live album from 1984. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it was
a double album, I heard that album when it was a cassette. Gary brought it into, no, sorry, it wasn't Gary, it was Bob's attorney came in and played it for us. He went to lunch. We could have copied it, but we didn't. we did. Well, I just couldn't do that.
Right.
Left the 2 cassettes and went across the street with my boss and had lunch, and he came back, and it was double album. What a great band.
Yeah, I mean I know and he had Ian McLagan too, and
Ian McLagan, Greg Sutton, who played on the album, my studio album with Mick, Ring of Truth. That's Greg Sutton, on that, and
Colin Allen from Stone the Crows.
Absolutely, and somebody else too that was really great on that tour. Well, I mean, he had lots of people that would come and sit in, and
like Carlos Santana, people.
Yeah, Carlos Santana. That's one. I would say, just from the horse's mouth, probably Duane Allman and Carlos Santana are Mick Taylor's favorite guitar players and influences, I think, probably. So I'm going out on a limb there, but that's what he would tell me.
I was going to say, the other thing that I remember was that when you were talking about Mick Taylor and his history and not being on lists, he's being erased from Rolling Stone's history too, to a certain degree.
Once you leave the Stones, you're dead. It really is true. And Mick did invite us to the show in 2013 in LA, and I was heartbroken that they rehearsed 29 songs with him before that first date. And they used him on one and the encore. And it was like, I mean, okay, Midnight Rambler, that was a great song for him to play on. But they should have used him on many more songs that he were signature songs for him that they didn't. And then when they came back, I'm not going to talk about the Stones because I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken that Charlie's gone. Yes. But and I'm also heartbroken that no condolences were paid to Bill Wyman and Mick Taylor. And I find that sad. It's very sad. Yeah. But that's someday maybe someone, Mick or Keith, will say, God, man, we should have, but it's too late now. So anyway.
All right, let's circle back a little bit. So you got the you had the cassette of Clean Cut Kid. They let you have that in your. You could take that home. That's what you.
They actually sent me the cassette. I'm sorry. Okay. Jeff Rosen is Bob's, one of his spokespeople and publisher, and we contacted him and asked him, was there anything that maybe we could cut that hadn't been released? My manager, Saul Davis, is very aggressive. And Jeff said, well, I'll send you a couple things. So he sent us Mozambique, and he sent us, trying to think, one other song, and Clean Cut Kid from the Infidels outtakes with Sly and Robbie. And that's what we got. And I said, I'll take that one, please. Is that okay? And he said, absolutely. So when we went to record it, with the Textones for Midnight Mission. Ry wasn't on it yet. I mean, it wasn't an idea to have Ry Cooder on it yet. We cut the track, and then I was contacted by Bob. He was in Paris on tour. He said, well, the song needs a bridge. And I said, okay. And he goes, well, I haven't written one yet. And I said, well, I can, make a stab at it. So he said, okay. So I wrote a musical bridge. And then I also, God, can you believe, submitted some lyrics, which I thought were similar in a vibe. And I get a call. We've already got the track cut with my music in that section where it goes to the minor, and then and then I whistle and the whole thing. Oh God, I'm trying to think what month it was, but anyway, he called us in the studio. Barry Goldberg was co-producing the album, who obviously went electric with Bob at Newport. Barry was from the Electric Band with Mike Bloomfield.
Right.
And Bob got on the phone with me and he said, I'm going to read you the lyrics that I have for it. And I said, okay. I'm scribbling it down on a piece of paper. The last time I seen him, he had a smile on his face. He was laughing at nothing. He wanted to go to my place. Those were the lyrics that were read to me over the phone. Wrote it down, sang it, and there you go. And then Barry said, couple of days later, I've called my buddy Ry and asked him if he'll play slide on this track, because Mick was off doing some other stuff, and I didn't really feel I could ask him. Kind of would have been nice, but anyway, because he did play slide on the demo that we had, which was the shuffle. As I said, it was the one with Mann, exactly. Yeah. Knopfler's not on that. I don't think Knopfler's on that. So we cut the track, we added the music, and then Ry came in and played 4 or 5 passes at playing through the song and the solo as well. And that's what the song ended up with, the Textones and Ry Cooder. Thanks, Ry. Another. And Ry again has also been very generous and kind to me. And he ended up producing a song that the band was in a movie, and he ended up producing that session. And he played on it, but then he took himself off. So, yeah.
You've already covered, you answered a lot of my questions already. The only note I have is another Mick Taylor great song you did was Winter.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was another great one. Well, let's bring you up to date. You're on the B side of the new Brian Ray single. Brian Ray, which isn't as easy to say as it is to read.
Brian Ray. I love Brian Ray. He's the coolest. He's such a great guy. Oh, yeah.
How'd you get in touch with him, or how did he get in touch with you?
We actually met through Estrella, Donovan's daughter. I was producing a demo for her, and we did a Van Morrison song in the studio, and she was playing a gig in LA, and Brian came and sat in and played guitar. And after the show, we were talking, and Brian came up and says, I was a fan of the Textones a long time ago. I used to come see you guys at the Troubadour all the time. And I said, that's great. Yeah. And I didn't know at the time, I knew the other guitar player, because we had done gigs with the guitar player that's on the left, and Brian's the blonde.
You mean Rusty?
And no, Rusty in Paul McCartney's band. And he used to have this band called The Living Daylight.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
And they were managed by Ian McLagan's manager, who was a friend of ours. And I just started talking to Brian about music, and he says, yeah, I was a big fan of yours, and I saw you in the Dylan video, and blah blah blah. And so we just sort of kept in touch all those years, and every once in a while we'd meet him for a meal, and in Santa Monica when we were down there. And the reason that this song came about is because of I suppose he's a huge Procol Harum fan. I was too, but I never sang that song before I walked into the studio to sing it that day, because I thought he was going to sing it. And then he says, no, you're singing it. And I went, okay, whatever. I got the lyrics right here. I guess I'll do it. And we've been doing a project that I'm producing, and it's coming out, other than the Lightfoot album, which you mentioned earlier, the Lady Sing Lightfoot, an album of Americana Railroad songs. And that album will be coming out by the time probably this is going to be coming on the air. We can talk about it. It'll be coming out for Record Store Day in November. So can't tell you any more about it, other than that I produced, the majority album is produced by me. I'm on 2 songs, and 3 songs actually, and the rest is people that I've chosen. Dave Alvin is one of them. Rob Waller, Rocky Burnett, who's a very close friend of ours, whose father was Johnny Burnett, and Gary Myrick. I won't tell you any more about it because I'm kind of bound by
contractual stuff.
No record. They're trying to, make it a big deal. Record Store Day, whole deal. So, yeah. That's the other project. But that, Brian and I were talking about railroad songs, and he says, I got one. You got to come and sing on it. So that's how that happened. And I'm producing 2 or 3 other records right now. An album with Stephen McCarthy from the Long Riders. He and I are doing a duet album together. And I have another Half Harmony Will Travel 3, which is, I've got 4 or 5 tracks already done for that. And hopefully that'll be coming out once the stalemate we have in the record business is over with. We're just putting stuff out when we can and where we can, and recording safely as we can. And I'm just glad I'm still here. You
were very generous. You sent me in advance sort of streaming of the Lady Sing Lightfoot, and it's one of those things you just listen to the beginning, and every song is wonderful. They all complement each other, but they all have their own different styles. Carla sings one song with the Textones, one song on her own, and some of the songs most people know, some of them are more obscure. It's coming out October 1st, I believe. And in the blog that accompanies this, we'll have links to how you can get it and so on. So the Textones do Early Morning Rain. You do a song called Ring Neck Loon. And there are a dozen other acts. I just want to go through them quickly because I think they all deserve to be mentioned. And one of the things I noticed is there's a lot of family stuff in it. A lot of people are related to other people or related to people that you've played with or whatever. I don't know if that was a conscious thing, but and some of the people well, I'll just go and start. Just if you don't mind, I'll just list them all quickly.
Please, all commentary wanted.
So there's Sundown by Darling West. It's a married Norwegian duo. There's Cotton Jenny by the Kennedys. They're another married couple. Steel Rain Blues by Natalie Noon, who's the daughter of Peter Herman Noon of Herman's Hermits, and he appears on I think the second Half Harmony Will Travel album.
That's correct.
There's Summer Side of Life by Sean Barton Baff, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who was in the Hazeldeans. There's River of Light by Arwen Lewis, whose father is Peter Lewis of Moby Grape. How cool is that? If You Could Read My Mind by Susan Cowsills of the legendary Cowsills, who were the inspiration for the Partridge Family, for those that don't know. And this one was really cool to find out. There's The Way I Feel by Ilse Juber, whose father is Lawrence Juber, who was played with Wings with Paul McCartney. And she's written songs that have been done by Miley Cyrus and Beyonce. Just pretty
very
impressive.
Prolific songwriter. Yeah.
There's a song Beautiful by Brazil's Ana Gazola, if that's how you pronounce it, who's known for her Portuguese covers of VG songs.
Yes, I produced that album, the Portuguese covers, and she translated all the songs into Portuguese with Barry Gibb's permission.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's Canadian Railroad Trilogy by Katie Moffat. Song for a Winter's Night by Christy Callan with her son and husband. and then there's Carefree Highway by Shayna Adler. So tell us all about it. I mean, it's your baby, right? This whole project.
Well, I came up with, Saul, my husband, manager, and I came up with the idea of women sing gourd, or girls sing gourd, and I said that marketing is not going to help you there. I came up with ladies sing Lightfoot, because Lightfoot says, you know, it doesn't matter if you're Canadian or you're not. Lightfoot is Lightfoot, okay?
Right. Yeah.
It's like Dylan. So, and Gordon Lightfoot is one of Bob Dylan's favorite songwriters. Bob Dylan recorded Early Morning Rain, so did Elvis, and a lot of other people have recorded Early Morning Rain. And we came up with an idea that a lot of his songs have been cut by women. Nico cut the song, G. Collins. I mean, there's Anne Murray. There's loads and loads of people, but nobody's put together a record and a collection, a tribute to Gordon, of women singing his songs. And since the songs are mostly about women, it's probably a good idea to see how they sound sung by women. And I just, I had ideas about songs that I wanted people to cut, but you know, you want this person to cut that song, and then suddenly you find somebody else is wanting to cut it. And I had choices of people to cut certain songs that just because of the COVID, just simply were not able to find recording facilities. And someday we'll do something, but it's wasn't meant to be. So we started, I think we started actually recording this, the picking of the songs and everything before COVID. And then COVID came, and we were able to track in January, February, and March. We tracked about 2/3 of the record, and before it was too late to do anything, in other words. So the idea of it was to finish it and put it out, but that was not meant to be. We thought COVID would be hopefully run its course by the end of the summer. We'd be able to finish it up for the fall or for January. Not meant to be, but we just kept trying, dabbling here and there, and I'm just glad that what we ended up with is a cohesive piece of work and a tribute to Gordon's beautiful lyrics. Obviously, I mean, he's a poet. This guy, he's amazing, and beautiful voices that bring it's not softness, just another attitude, a whole other attitude to the songs. And Susan Cowsill brings me to tears every time I hear the song, If You Could Read My Mind. And my brother was the reason that I was turned on to Gordon Lightfoot in the first place, because when a lot of those stuff came out in the late 60s, or mid 60s, late 60s, early 70s, my brother was moving to Europe to be an actor. And he said to me before he left, this, If You Could Read My Mind, that's the story of my life. I mean, he wanted to be an actor, and this was a heartbroken person. And my brother passed away last July. He not from COVID, but he was ill, and that's why the album is dedicated to him. Robert Carl Olson, Bobby taught me how to whistle too. And the album is full of I think of joy, which we needed a little joy right now. We need the uplift of the beautiful sound, like just Ilse for one, Ilse Juber, her haunting. It is haunting, that the voice, along with Lawrence's swampy sounding guitar. I mean, it's an incredible version of that song. And of course, there's a Song for a Winter's Night, which Christy Callan, I don't know, do you remember, you might have been in the record store when the punk band in Los Angeles, The Last, they were,
it sounds familiar, yeah.
The Goldberg brothers, and one of the brothers is the father who played on that song with Christy. She's married to him. She had a band called Wednesday Week, which was one of the Paisley Underground bands.
Oh yeah, I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah. And she and her sister the sister was a drummer. Anyway, every song has a little story. And I remember when Gordon, I was reading Nicholas Jennings' biography of Gordon before we started recording. I didn't want to record anything Gordon didn't like. I didn't want to record anything that felt like that it was not going to make him happy. And obviously I want him to like it. Haven't heard yet whether he likes it. He doesn't have email, he doesn't have a computer, and he doesn't have a cell phone. Hopefully he likes it, and I know when I've seen him play, we've seen him play almost every time he's come to LA, unless we were out of town. And I've met him many times backstage, and he's always very sweet, very gracious. And the biography said that a couple of these songs, he just wouldn't play anymore. That not these songs particularly. There's one he doesn't play, and I think a lot of it is just a personal issue in it. But it's an album that I hope, like you said, will play start to finish instead of picking one track here or there. It is, albums to me are a body of work. It's the way it is. That's my generation. There you go, my generation. And working on an album of Women Sing the Who too. Yeah, but it's just it's a passionate project for me, and we just had to make it happen. We had to make it happen. So thank you for listening to it top to bottom.
It's coming out October 1st. What formats is it going to be on? How are people going to be able to get it?
All formats except vinyl. We might do vinyl next year, but you have to get in line to do vinyl now. And
yeah, it's months.
Yeah, I have a reissue of Gene Clarke, So Rebellious a Lover, that's waiting in queue to be pressed. Mm-hmm. And it's been ready for almost a year. And we just can't get it pressed. So.
And will it be through Bandcamp or something else? Do you know?
It'll be all the streaming devices, Bandcamp, Amazon, Discogs. It'll be everybody. And we have Vaughn, artist distributor. Vaughn is up in the Pacific Northwest, and we'll see what happens. Maybe, I mean, obviously we want it in all the stores that sell records. Amoeba will take it here, and Amoeba, mm-hmm. God bless Amoeba. Oh God, it was terrible not having it for so long. Yeah. And we'll just have to follow it where it goes. It's a boutique label. It's Have Harmony Will Travel Records. It's my production company label, and that was the way that we decided to go, rather than wait. So there you go.
All right, so just a couple, since I'm known for my Bob Dylan stuff, so a couple more Bob Dylan connections to Gordon Lightfoot, aside from covering him. Absolutely. In 1986, he gave Gordon Lightfoot at the Juno Awards. I forgot what the exact award was, but he gave some. He gave him a. I will put up the video of Bob giving him an award, which is very entertaining. I don't know if you've ever seen it. And
I have seen it. And you know what Bob's quote about Gordon Lightfoot is that when you hear a Gordon Lightfoot song, you never want it to end. How much more compliment could you get as a songwriter from anyone in the world other than, Bob Dylan? That, I mean, to me, that's a moment that is going to be here for many generations, a quote for many generations.
And the last connection I can think of is in that Martin Scorsese Rolling Thunder film, when Joni Mitchell is doing Coyote, which is jaw-droppingly awesome. That's in Gordon Lightfoot's place, I believe. That's where it was filmed.
Yes. So. And the reason Gordon didn't perform was that he didn't have his guitars with him. And that's why he's standing in the back, and apparently, was sort of a last minute. Well, Bob kept asking him to join the tour, and he just didn't, it didn't work out anyway. But that's, from what I understand, that was the reason that he was not, he's in the movie at the end, but he would have probably played had he had his guitars. Yeah.
All right, Carla. Well, this has been such a pleasure. So much great information. I've had a great time. Hopefully you have as well.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
As I said, I'll get this up pretty soon, actually, and I will. There's a blog that goes with it, and I will have links to everything I can think of, and videos and so on. And hopefully, so October 1st isn't that far away actually anymore. And
no, it isn't far away. Exactly.
All right. Well, good luck with the project. Good luck with all your projects, and maybe our paths will cross again. And if you want to promote something else, let me know, and we can do it again.
All right, Harold. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the flip side.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.